Hello, this is Mary Lou Herman. I would like to make a segue on to the last video, the story about Lace and Grace. Anyhow, I ended with talking about the glory box. So the name of this story is The Glory Box. When God's glory comes to you, you have found your smile again. In Him, in His face. And you can smile and you can know that those old pictures of who you were with your fancy lace of the new smile on your face and God's grace, because He gave it back to you. It was His smile you were looking for anyhow. Then you are not a person thinking of the way we were. You are thinking of the way I am now, because with the acceptance of my total disappointments and failures that never gave me my expected end of happiness from my hopeless chest, I now have my glory box, and me and Jesus can make new memories of the way we are. Him and me. He is my Savior. He is my beloved. He is my bridegroom. And I am the person that He helps through thick and thin. I am the person He loves. I am His bride. And I give my dowry to Him with all my stuff and all my lace. And at the end, He gives me His grace. And I give Him all of me, and even the smile on my face. This is Lace and Grace. I have another story to tell you, but it's not written down. When my mother married my father, John, she was in a fantasy world. She just thought that her smile and his smile together and her hope chest were going to give her what she wanted. She wanted a fairy tale. She wanted the romantic, happy day, every day, lovey-dovey, wonderful life that all of us girls want when we're young. But he took her to a neighborhood street, and there was an empty lot there. And all it was a shack with an outhouse. And that was the day she lost her hope. But she was married. She had gone to the courthouse. She had married him. And there she was. So I don't know where they slept those first few months, or maybe for a year. I don't know where they slept. Maybe they slept in the shack. But they started to build on. It ended up to be a little house. And very small house. They didn't build a footer. There wasn't any basement. So the plumbing didn't get put in for years. So they used the outhouse. So I had 4 older siblings, and they had to use the outhouse. And so there was like 15 years in between me and the oldest child. So my mother had a boy, and then 2 years later she had another boy, and then 2 years later she had a girl, and 2 years later she had another girl. So that was the first 8 years of her marriage. And then she waited 9 years, and she had me. But by the time she had me, I wasn't a product of the marriage. she had met someone and had an affair, and he was married to someone else, and she was married to my dad, John, Daddy. And so she got pregnant. Well, back in those days, you didn't have abortions. I'm sure somewhere, somehow, somebody did it. But she wasn't going to have an abortion, so she just, she got through the first few weeks, I think, in fear, and then she had to start telling people. So she decided to lie about it, and that was her decision, to lie. So when I was a little girl growing up into grade school years, I was very perceptive, and I still am, but it started when I was young. So I would go to her and I would say, "Tell me the truth. Tell me the truth." And I didn't even know what I was talking about, but she had developed this way of keeping this secret, but it really damaged our relationship. I could not trust her because I knew that she wasn't telling me the truth, and I didn't even know what it meant, what it was about. So people have human weaknesses, and I held a grudge on my mother for, well, my whole life, absolutely, until one day I realized that I was just as weak as her in that area, and that I could fall into that trap very easily. Even though I said I would never do that, it ended up that I did do that. I met a married man, and at first it was very platonic, and we were both aware of what was happening, but not really. We were smiling at each other a lot, in church actually, and you start to feel some feelings like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but you're caught up in the friendship that is starting to grow, and you just don't know what to do about it. So all of the judgment I had on my mother, I had to withdraw that judgment with gasping. I mean, I had no idea that I would fall into such a thing. And I had no intention. I had no determination to do that. But when it happened, it was overcoming me. It took over my senses of my sensibility. And I went along with it. So what happened was, it was a 7-year relationship that had a lot of breakups because he was always saying, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. And I was always saying, I shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be doing this. So the first 3 months were heavenly. And then after that, reality was taking its toll. And so I also do not like to lie about things. So instead of keeping it a secret, I told everybody about it. I told my kids. I told whoever I could tell. And I just felt that if I told, and if I said it out loud, that it would go away, that it would end, because somehow telling the truth would make it right. But that wasn't it. It didn't change anything. We still had times where we got together, and it was a lot of stress, a lot of strain, and I couldn't validate it, or I couldn't say that it was the right thing to do, but I couldn't say that it was wrong either. There were moments in our friendship that were very pure and loving and tenderhearted, that had nothing to do with your skin or your body. And so I just rationalized it, and I believed that it was okay. And I would tell his sister, it's okay, this is good, this is a good thing. We're learning things, we're gaining strength in different areas. And it just, it just was, it was a fantasy that was living and breathing in two people that couldn't let go of each other. And then there came a time when he did let go. And then he couldn't handle letting go, so he would come back again. And that went on for a long time. And then we finally actually broke up 5 years into it. And then a year after the breakup, he wanted to come back and see me. And so we weren't used to the friendship anymore. So we just, did what people do when they have an affair. And it was disappointing and heartbreaking to know that that was the end of it, and that that's all there would be left. That's all there was. So then there was nothing again for another year. So he was lying to his family and keeping it a secret. And I was telling people. But finally, I told him that it had to be finished, and the only way to finish it was to confess. And he had to confess to his pastor and his wife and his family. And he was reluctant to do that. So I wrote a letter to his pastor, and I forced his hand. And I had to get it to be done. I had to be done with it. But there is a strong pull when you have sex with somebody. And the pull of the sex is not the only thing. The friendship gets all mixed up with your emotions and longing for love and longing for that smile. And as I'm older now, I've had several other opportunities. The trap kind of was set. I fell into it one time. I pulled out of it. Took 7 years. I lost a dear friend out of it. She was his sister. And I lost that. And I've gone to other church situations, other Bible studies. And Satan always sets the same trap. And I've realized recently that the only one that can pull out of it is me. So I usually just stop going to that church or that Bible study. But the reason I'm talking about this is not just to confess things. Satan sets traps up for people who are Christians because he can't get you any other way. You're sold out to Jesus, but you have human frailties and weaknesses. So he finds what it is. It doesn't have to be the same trap that he uses on me. But the other part of it is that I had an open door that wasn't closed. And the open door was that I really wanted that smile to come from a man. I wanted that smile to be coming from a lover on the earth, a friend, a male companion, a mate, somebody I could grow old with, and somebody I could do things with, and somebody that would go with me to the doctor's office and hold my elbow and let me lay my head down on their shoulder. I wanted that. I wanted that smile. And then one day I realized that when I was a young child in my mother's family, in the family I grew up with, she was lying about my identity, and she managed to keep it a secret. I don't know how. Believe me, I don't know how. Everybody just thought that it was okay that the dad in the house was my dad. I don't know. There's more stories to tell about it, but for this story, I'm just talking about this one part of it. So my dad in the house would go to work, and my mother would dress me up, and I was little, 4, 5, 6, 7, and she had the pretty sundresses for me to wear, and she had the, putting flowers in my hair and making it be a real special time when my real father would come to visit me. And she wanted me to call him Uncle Georgie. So I did. I thought that he was my uncle. And when I was little, I didn't even wonder why he was coming. But she said that Uncle Georgie's coming to see you. So he would come in the house, and he didn't spend that long with me, but he would always sit on the couch and hold me on his lap, and he would smile down in my face. And my face was very close to his face. And it was almost like that smile was a kiss. It was almost like it was so powerful. And he would smile at me, and I would smile at him. And it was like, became my identity. It became my desire, what I wanted to have. And so my dad in the house didn't smile a lot. He was grouchy a lot. He yelled at me, he yelled at my mother, he yelled at my sister. But they stayed together. I don't know why they continued on. But she lived upstairs and he lived downstairs. So the divorce wasn't on paper, but it was a real divided household with a lot of stress and tension. So after I was 8 years old, Uncle Georgie had something happen in his family with his wife. And I think she gave him an ultimatum and said, no more. If you don't stop, then I'm going to leave. She probably said that. So he told my mother, I am not going to be able to come and visit anymore. That's the end of it. And I'm not going to take you out anymore. I'm not going to see Mary Lou anymore. And so my mother absolutely lost her mind. She began to be hysterical every day. She ran around the house, and she would say things like, I'm going to put my head in the oven. I'm going to throw myself in front of a truck. So we didn't know how to handle that. I had a younger sister. She was 2 years younger than me, and I think she was a product of this affair also. But I'm just talking to you about me. So when I was 8 years old, this man, Uncle Georgie, decided that it was over. And he never did claim me as his daughter. He never did say, I'm your daddy. He never did do anything for me. He never took me out on a visit out somewhere with just him. It was never anything like that. So, so when I was 8, and my mother was screaming and taking one of her hysterical fits and rage and outbursts, and she was yelling at my dad, and he was sitting in a chair underneath the clock. And we had this clock that made noises. I would call it the Sea Hunt clock. There used to be an old TV show called Sea Hunt. And the man would go underwater, and you could hear these noises. So this clock made those crazy noises. And my mother wouldn't get rid of the clock. It was a broken clock. So she yelled and screamed at my daddy. He was sitting there. And I do remember he had like a shocked look on his face, like the deer in the headlights, just shock. And she was screaming these words, She's not your daughter. She's not your daughter. She's not your daughter. And I was sitting on the steps. This was they were in the dining room, and the steps were right there, and I was sitting on the steps. Now, my sister Mickey was sitting behind me. So this was absolutely probably the first trauma that really stopped my life. Before that, I was molested when I was 3 and 5. But it didn't last. It was a temporary thing. I'm pretty sure it was my older brother. He was just exploring and touching. And as bad as that was, it still wasn't as bad as this day. So this day was the first really big, I call it like an explosion. So I was sitting in front of my younger sister, Mickey. So what happened to me was I took it like an explosion, and everything within me got shattered and into little pieces and particles. And I'm talking about my emotions. I'm talking in metaphor now. And so I stopped at that point. I stopped growing older, and my life stopped. And my sister Mickey behind me, she imploded. She took it inwardly, and for me it went outwardly. And the way I explain it is I just gave my life to other people through my whole life. I became a caregiver in every relationship. And that was the explosion. I had no identity. I had no concept of self. I had no self. I just gave up. And there was other people that I would be around, and I would just take care of them and do stuff for them. And just, it went into every part of my life. Like if I went grocery shopping with a friend, I would let them do their grocery list, but I wouldn't do mine. I'd wait till another time. And I gave everybody the right to exist on the earth and in the moment, but I didn't exist. So Mickey, on the other hand, took it in a way where she got all self-centered and withdrew inside, but her life, herself became a selfish way of being the most important person in every relationship. And I did it the other way. I was the least important person in every relationship. So the other thing that happened in the household was